Hello, dear chess friends. Do you struggle when studying theoretical endgame positions? We all know that this is a difficult and tedious task, and to be honest, it's sometimes a bit boring. But the importance of theoretical endgames shouldn't be underestimated, because regardless of how well you play some practical endgame positions, you should always know what to look for, what is your aim, and the knowledge of very important theoretical positions will make easier your calculation and your evaluation of practical endgames. Therefore, some percentage of your study time should be dedicated to the most important theoretical endgame positions. In this video series, I would like to make the entire process of learning such endgames simpler for you and for sure more enjoyable. We will try to study them in the right way. At the beginning, we will focus on some really very simple and basic endgames, and progressively we will start exploring some really complicated stuff. Let's start with one very basic type of pawn endgame, and I will show you a very fundamental rule that can be applied in many kinds of pawn endgames. This is the so-called square rule. If we call it otherwise, it will be the square of the passed pawn. Let's take a look at the board. White has a passed pawn on g4, and you can see the square of this pawn. So the square goes from g4 to g8, then to c8 and c4. It's very simple to draw the square. Why this rule is so important? Because by using it, you can immediately understand whether the opponent's king can stop the pawn or not. As you can see on the board, the black king right now is out of the square of our pawn, and our pawn cannot be stopped. Let's prove that this is correct. So let's say black plays king b7, g5. Now g5. You see that with every move the square of the pawn changes. Then black plays king c7, g6, king d7, g7, and okay, at the end of the day, it becomes clear that black is unable to stop the pawn. Okay, we're not going to waste time with such simple stuff. This is just to be sure that we are on the same page. And now I will show how to use the square rule in some a bit more complicated examples. Let's take a look at this game played by Frederick Yates and Frank Marshall. It seems that black is about to lose the game, because the white king is in the square of our a4 pawn, but the black king is far away from the square of the f pawn for white's f pawn. So here, in order to save the game, Marshall uses one very instructive idea, the so-called Reti maneuver. Okay, a kind of a Reti maneuver, but the idea is quite similar. First of all, he plays king b2, threatening a3. That's why white should capture the pawn. For example, king takes a4, and here after king c3, you can see that the black king is approaching the f pawn just in time. Let's take a look. f4, king d4, and it becomes clear that we are just in time to enter the square of the pawn. Why we managed to enter the square of the pawn? Because we gained a very important tempo. Let's suppose that at the beginning, instead of king b2, black plays king to c2, the most straightforward way to go towards the f pawn. In this case, however, white plays f4, king d3, and it's not difficult to see that the black king is out of the square of the f pawn, and white is winning the pawn. Since the white is winning the game, since the f pawn is unstoppable. Okay, now let's take a look at another position. Once again, something very similar to the study of Richard Reti. You can now stop the video. It's white to move. You can stop the video, think on your own for about 1-2 minutes, and try to come up with the right solution. Okay, I hope that you have managed to solve the puzzle relatively easy. It seems that white is about to lose the game because it's very difficult for the white king to support the c6 pawn, and also black has connected passed pawns on the king side. So the position seems really lost. But white uses this Reti maneuver in a very spectacular way. So first of all, we play king g6, king b6, black is about to capture the c6 pawn, king takes g7, and now h5. Okay, it seems that the h5 pawn is unstoppable since the white king is far away from the square of the h pawn. Therefore, we need to win a tempo. Let's imagine that white has the right to make 2 moves in a row. Okay, then it's possible to enter the square. I even don't speak about taking the pawn in this way, but we can play king f6, king e5, and we are in time to enter the square of the h5 pawn. This means that somewhere on the road we should win a tempo. And actually, winning a tempo in this case is pretty simple. You start with king f6, threatening king g5, h4, and pay attention to this move. King e5, this is the key move, which is actually winning a tempo. Besides planning to enter the square of the h pawn, which is this one, so we are threatening to play king f4. Besides that, we are planning to support our c6 pawn by means of king d6. Therefore, let's imagine if black plays h3, we will just go for king d6, h2, c7, h1, and we're promoting at the same time. So here, in order to prevent white king from supporting the passed pawn, black will take the c6 pawn, but after king f4, we're in the square of the h pawn. Actually, this is the original idea of Richard Reti. He tries to enter the square of the opponent's passed pawn by winning a crucial tempo. And how we win the tempo? By trying to support our passed pawn. Okay, let's take a look at one last example featuring this topic. It's pretty simple. Now, you should try to calculate the move g4 and see whether we can win the game by pushing the g pawn forwards. If you want, as always, you can stop the video and think on your own for a while, and then you will see the solution. Okay, when you know the square rule, it's quite easy to understand that the immediate g4 is not winning the game, because black will play king c4, and you see that the black king will enter the square of our passed pawn. Let's give an example. We start with g4, king c4, g5, king d5, and the black king will inevitably catch the pawn, and that's it. But there is one important method that you should know. Sometimes you can prevent the opponent's king from entering the square of our passed pawn by making a pawn sacrifice, thus forcing the opponent to occupy one of the key squares with a pawn, for example. And here, white can play actually d5, and what we see after c takes d5, the important d5 square is occupied by a pawn, and therefore when our pawn reaches the g5 square, the king of our opponent will not be able to go to d5 just to enter the square of the g5 pawn. Let's see how this concept works in practice. g4, let's suppose king c4, g5, and the d5 pawn doesn't allow the black king to enter the square, and okay, black should already resign. I would like just to mention one more variation here. After g4, actually, black can try to initiate his own counterplay by means of d4, g5. Okay, it becomes clear that the opponent's king is far away from the square of our passed pawn, but after d3 you should pay attention to black's threats as well, because if allowed, black is going to play d2 and he's basically winning in view of the checkmate. That's why we start with king c1, just to be sure that the d3 pawn is not going anywhere, and then we are just going to promote. Okay, this was the rule of the square of the passed pawn. One very simple rule, but it can be used in more complicated examples, as you have just seen. Okay, thank you for watching, and on the next video I'm going to explain the concept of shouldering. Thank you for your attention.